is in an environment where it is warmer than usual or hotter than usual, then the blood vessels which are located underneath the surface of the skin, those blood vessels, they will actually do two things. One, they will actually dilate, that means that they actually get wider, and two, they will actually move closer to the surface of the skin, which is what is being shown where the diagram where the image is showing the blood vessels getting wider, and the arrow is actually indicating that they will actually go closer to the surface of the skin. Now, once those two things actually take place, then basically the blood will be able to transport or circulate more blood around the human body and carry it to the close to the surface of the skin there. Now, the blood is what actually transport heat around the human body. So once that heat get close to the surface of the skin, then it will be easily able to get out of the human body. That's why the blood vessels normally go closer to the surface of the skin, so that the heat is closer to the atmosphere. So that is what is known as vasodilation, and that basically take place when the environment is actually hot. Now, the subheading, which is the opposite of vasodilation, is vasoconstriction. So, as for dilation, the blood vessel did actually widen, that is one, and two, the blood vessel did go close to the surface of the skin. As for this one, as keeping the body warm. So let's say, for example, you're in an environment where you're experiencing winter, that means the time is cold, or you're in an environment where there is air condition and the air condition is extremely cold. So in those two environments, the human body temperature is lower than normal. So what happened is that the human body temperature need to actually increase. So that's why the heading says keep the body warm. So in an effort to help to keep the body warm, the blood vessels will actually constrict, or vasoconstriction will take place. And they said that this is when the body is cold, the blood vessels reduces their diameter, so that means they then get smaller. So as for the I'm gonna bring up the diagrams. Alright, escape that. You know me, I soon share about the screen. Vasodilation, vasoconstriction. Alright, so this picture actually show both vasodilation and vasoconstriction. Right, just comparing the two. So we are focusing on what is taking place on the right. Heat conservation. So when the time is cold, the human body want to conserve heat. So if you're looking at the size of the blood vessels here, they are much smaller than under dilation, because vasodilation that normally take place when the time is hot. So now that the time is cold, the human body want to conserve heat. That simply means that the human body want to produce heat, and the heat that it produces, you don't want it to actually go out. So in order to prevent that, the blood vessels normally get smaller, and that is one. And two, the blood vessels normally go deeper down under the surface of the skin. So as for vasoconstriction, it is a total opposite of vasodilation, because when the time is actually cold, the human body want to produce and want to conserve heat and not to get rid of heat. It is whenever the time is hot, the human body try to get rid of heat. So they are saying that blood vessels then carry less blood. So as I would have said, is that the blood vessel is what actually transport blood around the human body. So when the time is cold, then the blood vessel going to carry less blood, because the human body, less heat I should say, because the human body literally don't want to actually get the heat out of the body. So in carrying less blood, basically would allow it to carry less heat, because the amount of blood determines the amount of heat that is being transported. For those, if anybody ever recognize or notice that whenever they kill an animal, let's say for example a cow or goat or pig, the blood normally warm, and that is simple to prove that yes, heat actually move around the body, travel from one place to another in the blood, because only two parts of the human body produce heat, and those are your muscles. So your muscles produce heat, and also your liver. So let's say for example in the brain, there is no muscle in the brain, there is no liver in the brain, and the brain need to be kept warm when the time is cold, for example. So once the liver and the muscle produce some heat, then it is the blood that will actually carry that warm air to your brain, so that the brain can body so that the brain temperature can be maintained. So the last point I was saying, when less blood is carried, less heat is lost through the skin. Alright, so shivering, this is the next way by which the human body help to regulate temperature. So shivering is what we call trembling. So persons will notice that whenever the time is cold, they normally tremble. So I guess you want to know why you tremble, etc., etc. Now, again, when the time is cold, the human body want to produce heat, and the human body want to conserve heat. So the human body don't want to give off heat to the environment. So in an effort to keep the body warm when the time is cold, due to the fact that your muscles normally produce heat. Remember I said that your muscles and your liver produce heat. But when the time is so cold, your muscles actually want to speed up the process. Your muscles want to produce a lot more heat, because the time is extremely cold. So the muscles start to work faster. So because they are contracting and relax so fast, they actually start to vibrate. So they give off a vibration movement. So that is why you actually tremble when the time is cold. So when the time is cold and you're trembling, it is not like your body is going through a form of sickness or anything like that. It is just your muscles are contracting so fast that they actually give off a vibration effect, and that is what is called shivering, or what we normally call trembling. So the muscles under the skin quickly contract and relax. So they contract and relax, contract and relax. So the muscles are working, hence heat is released as respiration increases. So in terms of the whole shivering motion, the whole shivering movement, that is basically your muscles contracting so fast that they actually give off that vibration that we call shivering. So when the time is cold, the human body will respond by, of course, allowing vasoconstriction, and the human body will respond by allowing shivering to take place. So those are two ways. So definitely, for question exam purpose, I will be asking you to tell me how the human body respond in cold environment to keep the body warm. So how the human body respond in cold environment to keep the body warm. One way would be by shivering, and two would
Can you
be
repeat back the question again?
how the human body cope to keep the body warm. So how the human body cope to keep the body warm in cold environment. How the body cope, or how the body respond to keep the body warm in cold environment. Alright, so the answer for that, so the answer would be shivering and vasoconstriction. So shivering and vasoconstriction. So vasoconstriction is one way in which the human body will react, and the other one is shivering. All right. Subcutaneous. You finish?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Subcutaneous fat. Now, this is a layer of fat that actually acts as an insulating layer against cold. Now, every human being have this form of fat underneath their skin. It is called subcutaneous fat. Now, the more weight you have, that simply means that fatter persons will have more of this fat. So when the time is cold, persons who are obese, they are not as cold as persons who are slimmer. Simply because the fatter you are, the more of the subcutaneous fat you will have in your body. And this fat, it actually insulate heat. That means that it trap heat in your body. So persons who are extremely fat, when the time is cold, they are not feeling that coolness because their body have a lot of this fat. As I said that the subcutaneous fat, it is a poor conductor of heat. Conductor is something that transport heat to another surface. So the fact that they said that the subcutaneous fat is a poor conductor of heat, that simply means that it will not transfer the heat from the human body to the atmosphere very easily. So when the time is cold, this subcutaneous fat also keep the body warm. But as I said, persons who are overweight or obese, those persons are generally warmer when the time is cold, because this subcutaneous fat, the more weight you have on, the more of it you will have in your body. So the last point I saying, of course, that the subcutaneous layer hold heat within the human body. When the time is cold, of course, clothing, persons can put on additional clothing. So you put on sweater, you put on an extra shirt, etc., etc. And ear, this as for human being, we don't have on so much ear on our body. So animals like donkey, cow, goat, you will realize that those animals, no matter what the time cold they, you will find them on the outside. And that is simply because the ear that is on their skin actually prevent heat loss to the environment. But human beings are not like that. Alright, so we should be moving on to this concept that is known as homeostasis. Now, before we move on to homeostasis, there are some terms that we must know their definition. So we have one that is known as hypothermia. So what is hyperthermia? This is a condition where the body temperature rises and the regulatory mechanism fail to cool it. So you can have a situation where your body temperature it increase so high, and it being increased so high, the mechanism which should cool it down, like for example vasodilation and sweating, those are not taking place. Because when you look at the point that he said that the condition where the body temperature rises, that means your body temperature increase, so that means that you're hotter than normal, and the regulatory mechanism fails. So question I can ask you, what is the regulatory mechanism for what is the regulate write down the question, what is the regulatory mechanism when the human body temperature increase? What is the regulatory mechanism when the human body temperature increase? So what is the
Sir, after mechanism, what else?
eh?
The mechanism, what else?
Or what is the regulatory mechanism when the body temperature increase? Yeah, what is the regulatory mechanism when the body temperature increase? All right, so what we are asking is that, so we say when the body temperature increase. So increase mean that you're in an hot environment. So the regulatory mechanism mean that when the body temperature increase, the objective should be to reduce that temperature, allow the temperature to actually decrease. So the regulatory mechanism mean how the human body are going to react. So what the human body gonna try to do to lower that temperature, and we would have looked at some of those. So when the time is hot, one, the human body normally sweat, so that's a sweating would be one of the regulatory mechanism. So the evaporation of that sweat will actually lower the body temperature. And next regulatory mechanism would be vasodilation, which we would have looked at last week. And as for vasodilation, the blood vessels normally get wider, and the blood vessels normally go closer to the surface of the skin. And once those two things take place, then heat will easily come out of the human body. So those are the regulatory mechanism. So they are saying that whenever you describe or whenever you classify somebody as being hypothermia, whenever you say somebody is suffering from hypothermia, you're basically saying that their body mechanism that should cool them down when the time is hot, it's not working properly. So it's not working. As the definition says, this is a condition where the temperature, where the body temperature rises and the regulatory mechanisms fail to cool it. So it means say it sweat where you sweat in and cool it. And it means say all of the vasodilation where take place is still now make it get cooler in terms of the temperature. Yeah. You understand the term, the definition for the term?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if I'm asking a question, if the time is hot now and you start to sweat, and the sweating where you sweat, it actually cool down your body, bring it back to a level where you can live normal. Would you classify yourself as being hypothermia?
No, sir.
Okay, perfect. Right, you wouldn't classify yourself as being hypothermia because the mechanism did not fail. So the only time you classify yourself saying that you're suffering from hypothermia is whenever your body temperature increase so high and you not sweat properly if you cool it down, and the blood vessels they not dilate enough to cool it down. So that is when you would actually say you're suffering from hypothermia. Whenever those cooling mechanism fail. Alright, the term below now is the total opposite. This one is known is called hypo. So we have hyper and we have hypo. So this one is called hypothermia. So this is when the body temperature is uncontrollable, lowered, and regulating mechanism fail. So this is a total opposite. So for this one now is whenever you're in a cold environment. So the time is so cold. So when the body temperature is uncontrollable, lowered, so that means it go down to zero and regulating mechanisms fail. So what you should now try to remember now, how the human body react when the time is cold. And one, you have the shivering effect, and two, you have the vasoconstriction. So they are saying that if you're in an air conditioned room and the time is so cold and your muscles they are not contracting fast enough to produce enough heat, and your blood vessels like how they're supposed to constrict and go deeper down on the surface of the skin, that is not taking place also, so you're continuously remaining cold. In that situation now, then you would actually classify yourself and say that you actually suffering from hypothermia. Because remember, the example I'm giving, I'm saying that you're in an air conditioned room where it is cold, and the shivering not helping you, and the vasoconstriction not helping you. So in that case now, you would realize that the regulating mechanisms them fail. You understand? Park Davis.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So we need to know the difference between these two terms. So one is hyperthermia and one is hypothermia. So as for the hyper, that is whenever the body temperature hot, high, and the sweating was supposed to help to cool it down, and the vasodilation, none of them then not work. So then you would say that you're suffering from hyperthermia. And the one below now, hypothermia. So whenever you're watching like movies and you see people in a condition like, say for example, in a snow and they freeze to death, it is hypothermia that the doctor would say that they die as a result of hypothermia. So that means they're in an environment where there's a lot of snow. So because it is snow, it is so cold where it does not matter how fast their muscle contract, their muscle can't produce enough heat to actually counteract that coolness that is coming from the snow. In terms of the blood vessel constriction, they cannot get small enough to allow as less as possible blood to transfer. Persons who freeze to death, like persons who die in those weather condition where it is snow, where it is snowing, then you would say that those persons die as a result of hypothermia. So United States that commonly happen. The one above now, hyperthermia, that also happen in United States, where you hear them say that persons die from heat stroke. So when you have boiling temperature outside and persons go outside, no matter how much them are sweat and no matter how much blood vessel dilation taking place, their body still not getting cool enough and then eventually die. So persons who die within environment where there is heat, then you would say that they die as a result of hyperthermia. Right, so those two terms, study them and study them and study them. Alright, so next thing we need to know the definition or difference between heat and temperature. So heat is a form of energy, while temperature is a degree of hotness. So what they're saying now, heat is actually the thing that we're looking at, while temperature basically speak of how high or how low that heat is. So we need to know the difference between heat and temperature. So heat, of course, a form of energy. So that is the while the temperature now speak to the degree of hotness. So the temperature now speak to how hot or cold something is. Alright, so homeostasis. What is homeostasis? First I see in this term or I see it before. Anybody have seen this word before? Davison? Seen it before? James? Come, four of you in the class. Somebody answer man.
No, sir.
I've never seen this term before.
No,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Sir, me not hear what you say.
No, I'm asking if you have ever seen this word before, homeostasis. Still not hearing me, James?
No, sir.
Okay. Alright, so homeostasis. This is how this is the way constant conditions in the body are maintained in spite of changes from the surroundings. Now, what they're saying is that the human body temperature, for example, we said that the normal body temperature is anywhere between 37 or 38 degrees Celsius. That is the normal body temperature for human being. Now, what they're saying is that if you're in a cold environment, the human body tries to get the temperature up to that 37 or 38 degrees. If you're in a hot environment, the human body temperature tries to get the body temperature down as close as possible to that 37 or 38 degrees Celsius. Now, the ability of the human body to maintain the body temperature, whether it is hot or whether it is cold, is called homeostasis. So homeostasis is the ability of your body to actually keep different conditions in the human body constant in spite of what is going on around you in the environment. For example, every time it's cold, the body try to do different things to actually allow heat to produce and to warm it up. And the total opposite, if the body is hot, the human body try to do things to actually get the body temperature um, down. So vasodilation, vasoconstriction, shivering, all those are different ways in which the human body react in terms of help to keep homeostatic condition in terms of temperature. So the second pointer, these mechanisms work to maintain normal condition in the body. And an example is your body temperature. So the normal body temperature, whether it is hot or whether it is cold, the human body at all time try to maintain that normal body temperature. So in doing so, that is what we normally call a homeostatic mechanism. So homeostasis is basically the ability of the human body to actually maintain that temperature in spite or whether the time is cold or whether the time is hot. It does not matter, but once the human body is working properly, then homeostasis will actually take care of that. Alright, so we have example. So the three examples now we these are three conditions that the human body try to ensure that they are constant in the human body. So blood water content. So whether you're drinking enough water or not, the human body try to ensure that enough water is in your blood. Blood glucose level. So whether you're eating a lot or you're eating a little bit, the human body try to maintain a certain amount of glucose in your blood, because glucose is what give the body energy, you know. So if there's no glucose in the blood, then eventually you're gonna die because there's no glucose. And the next thing that we're gonna look at how the human body try to regulate is body temperature, which basically we've gone through a lot of that already. Because the fact that we looked at how the human body behave whenever it is in hot environment, and we also look at how it behave whenever it is in cold environment. Now you knowing that, then you should be able to answer that question, because body temperature and its relation to the environment is very key. Alright, so again, homeostasis. So those three conditions that you have below down the bottom there, those three conditions, the human body try to ensure that they are constant. Because let's say, for example, body temperature. If the environment that you're in temperature is 70 degrees Celsius, the human body cannot allow itself to stay at 70 degrees Celsius. That would be way too hot for you to survive. So what the human body will try to do is to find ways to keep survive. And to do that is that the human body have to think about lowering the body temperature. So what are the things that the body gonna do to lower the body temperature? You're gonna have sweating take place, and you're gonna be having, of course, your blood vessels getting wider and going closer to the surface of the skin to give off the heat. So that is how the human body will react. And once that take place and the objectives are achieved, then of course homeostasis, that homeostatic mechanism, is working properly. For this topic, I really wish that the class was actually here, man. Well, I guess they're gonna have to look at the video then. They have no choice. Alright, so how does homeostasis work? So the whole mechanism, the whole principle for homeostasis, we're gonna look at how it works. Now, you're seeing the screen where you're seeing the box where with factor, increase, receptor, message, and all of those
Yes, sir.
set point. All right, I want you to um
Right.
quickly draw that box. Just quickly draw that box. In terms of the
Sir, me did already right here.
you did already write it?
Yes, sir.
No, well the thing is I wanted to do some in my explanation. I'm gonna use body temperature. So it's rough work. I did want you to draw one rough work, or if you wanna, if you have a pencil and can write in the one that you already draw. Right, is because this image actually can use to explain body temperature. For example, how the body react. Because Edin said, how does homeostasis work? So we're basically going to look at the mechanism. So the optimum, the word optimum mean normal. So the optimum normal level for a factor that need to remain constant is called the set point. So the normal level for a factor, which we're going to look at body temperature now, need to remain constant. Understand? And the constant that is supposed to remain should be its set point. So you see in a toolbox then was a set point. You see, because I'm gonna use this diagram to explain temperature, how the human body maintain the temperature. The set point will be 37 degrees Celsius. So let's start at the box, the one to the this we're gonna start at the one to the right. So if you realize if I'm saying that you would have 37 degrees for the set point. Now if you look in the corner, let me bring up the box. Let me increase it so you can see it. Right. So we have set point right there. You see in the cursor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So I'm saying if I'm using this to actually explain body temperature, how the human body regulate body temperature when the time is hot or when the time is cold. So you would have 37 degrees as the set point there. Over here it's a factor increase and down here is a factor decrease. So the fact that we're using body temperature, this is basically saying that temperature increase. So the factor that we're looking at now is body temperature. That would be the factor. So if you're in an hot environment, the temperature will increase from the 37. Let's say for example you're in the kitchen cooking, like in our restaurant, KFC or them big restaurant. So your normal body temperature should be 37 degrees. But guess what? The fact that you're in the restaurant is not going to be at that 37 degrees. You're gonna, let's say for example you spike up and you got 47 degrees. So following this arrow, so the factor increase, so instead of being 37, it actually go up to 47. Now where it said receptors mean that the sections are the part of your body that will detect and realize and say, guess what body? There's an increase in body temperature. So it is the receptors that will actually basically get that information. Once the receptors get that information, so the receptors in this case now would that be like for example anything we have to do with the skin and the sweating part of the skin. Anything we have to do with the circulatory system and the blood vessels that going to actually dilate. You understand? Hello, students.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Yes,
again,
sir.
right. So again, starting over set point, 37 degrees Celsius. Then say factor increase, so that means a temperature increase. Now the body have some things that are called receptors that will receive that information. Now over where you have effector now, effector will actually be the parts that the body part that gonna give off the effect. So in effector you could put sweat glands. Cause remember say you got sweat, you know. So you could put sweat glands in here so in a effector part. And you could also put blood vessels. So them the two would be the effector. Now the response, now the correct response, the corrective response now will actually be sweating and vasodilation. And once those two things take place, you're seeing the arrow going back down to set point, then you can now write the 37 degrees Celsius again. Because simply because you're sweating and simply because vasodilation take place, then that increase up to 47 degrees Celsius can be lowered to 37 or close as possible to it. I'm going to go over it again. So we're using this to explain body temperature when the time is hot, because it's a factor increase. So you have the 37 degrees there so as the set point. A set point means the normal level, what it should be. So I'm saying that if you go into a restaurant, for example, where there is increase in temperature, so let's say for example there's an increase up to 50 degrees Celsius, that would be way too hot for you. The receptors in your skin and all of the body parts will receive that information and now send it in after it analyze it and realize what need to be done. It will now send the information to the effector organs. So the effectors are the body parts that are going to actually do what it's supposed to do. So I'm saying that in effectors, simply because the skin is what going to sweat, you're going to put the skin there so are sweat glands. And you're also going to put the blood vessels. So you would actually put those under effector. Now the corrective response now is what those effector organs going to do to lower the temperature. So the skin gonna start to sweat, and the next corrective response is that the blood vessel now gonna start to dilate and go closer to the surface of the skin. And once those two things take place, then the 50 degrees will go down back as close as possible to the 37 degrees Celsius. Get that? Alright, so looking at this
Yes,
bottom.
sir.
Alright, great. So looking at this bottom part of the diagram now. So we have the same set point, 37 degrees Celsius, because we are looking at normal body temperature. So they are saying now factor decrease. So they say, for example, now you're going to one air conditioned room. So in another air conditioned room, they know it's extremely cold. So the fact that it is extremely cold, the body temperature it got drop from 37 degrees. Let's say for example you got 20 degrees Celsius. Now that is way too cold for you. So the receptors now in the human body gonna detect that and realize, so guess what? The body temperature gone down low, you know, something need to be done. So the receptors now will now send information to the effector organs. And the effector organs now will be your liver, will be your muscle, and will be your blood vessels. Now persons now should be asking why I said that the effector organ will be the liver, why I said that the effector organ will be the muscle and will be the blood vessel. Can anybody tell me when the time is cold why I said that the liver and the muscle will be two effector organs?
Sir, because when the time cold enough, so your body are going to need some warm temperature.
Right. And yeah, man, you're on the right track, man. Just finish it and tell them, man. See, because the time is cool and the body are gonna need some more eat. So why I mention the muscle and the liver? Because those two. What me say those two do? Hmm?
Sir, me never did that ear right, that broke out.
Oh. Alright, so the reason why the liver and the muscle, the reason why those will be effector organs is because these two parts of the human body produce heat. You understand? So the effector organs will be the liver, the muscle, and then you're gonna have the blood vessels. So the liver and the muscle will produce heat. So the response, so the corrective response will be liver produce heat, muscle produce heat, and the blood vessels will constrict. Those will be the three corrective response. And once those three things take place, then the body temperature will actually go back up to that 37 degrees or as close as possible to that 37 degrees Celsius. Alright, so we can use this to explain the how the body temperature actually regulate when the time is hot and also when it is cold. That's why you have factor increase and factor decrease. Alright, give me about 2 minutes away from the mic, students, please. Alright, so in looking at the same diagram, so the notes also explain what is taking place. So they are saying that receptors in the body detect any deviation, so that means change from the set point, either up or down, and send the information to a control center. So the set point and here, as I said, let's say for example we're using it for temperature, and the note said up or down. So factor increase would be up, and the factor decrease would be down. So they are saying that once the sensor receptors within the body realize those, then it's now going to send the information to the part of the body that is responsible for regulating the temperature, for example. And then so the parts would be like the muscle, that is when the time is cold, so that is when the factor decrease. That would be the liver, and that would be for the blood vessels where vasoconstriction will be taking place. Alright, so continuing, so we'll move on to the next slide. The control center then send messages to an effector, so the effector organ. So we have different effector organs, which takes action to bring the level of the factor back towards the set point. So when the time is at, the effector, as I said, would be like, for example, the sweat gland, and it would be the blood vessel, which will act force dilate and get wider. When those corrective responses are done, then it will actually go back to the set point. All right, so basically those slides with that diagram actually just give you an idea how homeostatic mechanism basically take place in the human body. So in terms of water, if you, for example, should drink too much water, or you're drinking too little water, the same homeostasis mechanism need to take place. Where if you are drinking a lot of water, due to the fact that human body know how much water need to stay in the human body, then in allowing the right amount of water to stay in the body, because remember you're drinking too much. So the fact that you're drinking too much, in order to ensure that you have the right amount of water in the body, then what will happen is that the human body gonna do things like sweat, human body gonna do things like urinate. So those will actually lower the water content. Now if you're not drinking enough water, the human body also gonna detect it and of course realize it. And yeah, I realized that you guys, everybody went offline a while ago. Alright, so I'm gonna repeat the explanation. Alright, so just Davis and James back on. Right, so I'm saying I'm using water for example, because there should be a normal water balance inside the human body. That simply means if you are drinking too much water, then the human body need to find a way to get rid of the excess water that you have inside there. And one way in which the human body get rid of excess water is by, of course, you urinating. Because if there is too much water in the human body, without you urinating, then your cells will basically burst, because your cells help to store some of the water. So that's why you urinate to get rid of the excess water. Now on the opposite end, now if you're not drinking enough water, then what will happen is that the human body gonna actually remove water from places in the body, or things in the body that of course contain water. So like your blood, for example, the human body will actually take some of the water from it, and that is not healthy. Because we normally say that if too much water leave the cells in the human body, they will actually become plasmolyzed or then shrink. And so that is why persons must always try to drink enough water. So homeostasis of water balance. So homeostasis of water balance is basically talking about how the human body try to regulate the amount of water that is inside it. So the first point is saying that our body fluid always remain constant. So the different body fluid into like saliva, blood, tears, those are the body fluid. So they are saying that the human body always try to maintain or keep them at a constant or a normal level, whether we drink a little or a lot of water. So do you drink a lot of water or you drink a little amount of water, the body still try to regulate these things. The kidneys are responsible for our water balance. So in terms of if there's too much water in the body, then the kidneys now will of course start that process, urinating process, where you will actually urinate and get rid of those excess water. Water that enters the cell blows them up like an inflated balloon. So then become turgid. So what they are saying is that when you drink water and the water go into the cell, it will actually make them get more inflated, like a balloon. So instead of saying inflated or say them blow up, we normally use the word turgid. So turgid mean that water enter the cell and then basically get larger. It means that them inflate. The body fluid becomes less concentrated than body cells. Right, so the fluids so less concentrated simply mean that it don't have in a lot of solid stuff in it. Understand? That's why that's all they mean by less concentrated. So it of course have more water. So water now will now enter the cells. If the cell takes in too much water, then they may burst. So due to the fact that the human body don't want the cells to burst, then that is why if you're taking in too much water, then you're gonna urinate like immediately after you consume too much water, or just few minutes or an hour after you, then you're gonna actually start to urinate. Because if the human body should allow this excess water to stay inside it for a long period of time, then of course the cells can burst, and having damaged cell in the body is really serious. Alright, so continue with that homeostasis of water balance. So should water leave the cells, then they lose this support and deflate. So just like balloon, if you let the air out of the balloon, then you're gonna actually lose the shape. So we normally say deflate. If the body fluids become more concentrated than then water leave the cells. So what they are saying, if you are not drinking enough water, what will happen is that the body cells gonna lose some water, right? And once the body cells lose some water, then those cells, they can actually shrink, and that is dangerous. Your skin normally seems to be dry. Because the reason why water is not leaving the cell, is because at any given moment there should be the right amount of water circulating in the blood. So if you're not drinking enough water, the human body gonna find a way to get water to feed to go into that blood, and that is to get the water from your cells, and that really don't you don't want that to be taking place over and over, because now then you would now be damaging the cells. And so the control of water balance in the cell, it is known as osmoregulation. So osmoregulation, the definition is the control of water in the body cell. So you'll realize that for today's class you have quite a bit of some you have some terms that you need to know their definition. You have hypothermia, temperature, and of course you have heat, and then you have osmoregulation, and of course homeostasis. You should know what that word mean in terms of its definition. Alright, so we have other things that need to be controlled. We have glucose, so that's the amount of sugar circulating going around in your blood, that also need to control, so that you're eating enough or too little carbohydrate or glucose. It still need to keep at a constant level. Alicia and Davis are gonna type some. I'm gonna give you some questions in WhatsApp, because trust me, it's just two of you, and I'm not gonna go up until 3 o'clock in terms of explanation, because quite sure if I go over it when those other students join, hopefully for next class. So I'm gonna give you some questions. Now, before I give you the question, please be reminded, please be informed that sometime next week I will be giving you some form of a graded test, monthly test. Because the fact that we're in a new month now means that you should be tested for the previous month. So sometime next week I'm gonna give you some form of exam monthly test, okay?
Sir,
Yes,
send a
sir.
note in our group, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, send the notes in our group too.
Yes, sir.
All right, no problem. Right, so I'll send the notes and send a few questions. All right, so have a productive weekend and be safe until next week. So remember, line up yourself for a test next week, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, so take care, students.